Let's get you the latest updates from the Supreme Court. That 9-judge constitution bench currently hearing the issue of faith versus equality, of faith versus rights. The CJI right now has in fact suggested a conference or a meeting of the lawyers on both sides to save time. He said that you confer and decide and frame the issues. CJI Bobde has said that we can have a hearing on the framing of the issues for consideration. He's also said that the second thing is that councils will decide on which issues they will address. We don't want an unnecessary overlap and repetition. You decide between yourselves who will argue what. So this is what's happened. In fact, you've also got senior advocate Rajiv Dhawan, who's appearing in person, who said that the court cannot define what religion is. The CJI has in fact said that the likes of CS Vaidyanathan and Rajiv Dhawan, who had a role in the Ayodhya issue, have filed interventions and they should also be included. The SG has said that the 7 issues in the reference order will be taken as broad propositions and have to be fine-tuned and reframed. So a lot of interesting arguments taking place. Aishwarya Paliwal is joining us with more details. Aishwarya, the CJI seems to be for some sort of a meeting of the lawyers of all sides to frame the issues so that you don't, waste time repeating the same issues over and over again while arguing in the Supreme Court.
Well, one thing is very clear from what the CJI is saying is that they don't want to go haywire. They want to stick to the issues for which they have assembled there. Now, let me tell you, all the issues of Muslim women, they are saying every issue should be taken up, but they're also saying that you file a proper application. This is what the CJI is saying at the moment. They're saying the matter, what matter is not before the Supreme Court. We'll not take it up. Later, we could look at it, whether we want to take it up or not. He's also saying that the Council of Councils now needs to decide. They need to sit together and decide and frame for what they're fighting for. And then the Supreme Court will then take an issue. So definitely the CJI trying to streamline all the issues and saying that you decide what you want us to hear first, because we don't want to go haywire and we don't want to waste time. This is what the CJI is saying in the Supreme Court.
So there's been a lot of talk about how this particular decision by the Supreme Court, by the 9-judge constitution bench, is going to echo not just in the Sabrimala case but several other cases, and that's what Aishwarya is also referring to. The fact that during the hearing now there has been a mention about issues of Muslim women allegedly facing discrimination, Parsi women and others. The CJI, in response to an advocate mentioning this, has said you file a proper application. That matter is not before the Supreme Court yet. You've also got a number of advocates. I'm going to take this across to Gopi Krishnan also. Gopi, a number of parties also now seeking to intervene in this matter, knowing that the scope of these particular arguments is huge and could have repercussions on a lot more than just the Sabrimala case.
Well, absolutely, because our initial assessment was that the 9-judge bench is going to consider the Sabrimala issue or issues pertaining to the debate on Sabrimala issue. But now, as we are seeing, this is actually going to a much broader aspect. And Chief Justice also seemed to be hinting at the very same, because these 7 matters for reference will lead into a very broader argument. As Singhvi was saying, this will actually each issue in this particular reference will need to be brought out as a textbook. So that will consume a lot of time, and that is why we assume the CJI himself has recommended that let the lawyers sit together, let them discuss, let them debate, and let them have a meeting. And after that meeting, let them decide on what are the issues or who are the parties they are going to represent. That will save a lot of time, is what CJI was saying. But still, we need to have a better clarity on what are the actual issues of reference or the matters of reference. We already know on November 2019, the 5-judge bench has actually referred 7 matters to the 9-judge bench. We do, as of now, from whatever we are understanding from the courtroom, we might just see a scenario where these reference points could be increased or decreased, because that could be one reason why the CJI has said let the lawyers sit together and decide. And this actually now it clearly means that this is not just going to be on Sabrimala, because every single issue where there is a conflict of different articles in the Constitution, I'm talking about the religious aspects,
yes,
where there is a conflict between Article 14 and the 24-25, all those things will have to be considered. So certainly now we are looking at a scenario where the Supreme Court will have to take its time, will have to go through these arguments, will have to listen to these counsels and lawyers, and finally come down to a conclusion on how to interpret this legal conflict between these two articles. And after that, each case, which will include the Sabrimala case as one, the Parsi women case as one, the Muslim women case as another one, each case will again have to be interpreted or handled in reference to the outcomes of this nine-judge bench. So it will certainly take a lot of time, and at least for the Sabrimala petitioners, they will have to wait a little longer or a little too longer to see a final outcome in that particular case.
No, and that perhaps is also the challenge that the Supreme Court faces, that in this kind of a hearing, it has repercussions on several other cases. The CJI has made a mention of that also. He said that cases like the Sabrimala case, the entry of Muslim women, of Dawudi Bohra and the Parsi women, he said that we're considering listing all these petitions, but we are not going to decide on the specific facts of these cases. You've got several lawyers also stepping in saying, look, we want to make a case for ourselves. Advocate V. Giri, who's representing the chief priest of the Sabrimala temple, has said we should also be heard, but the CJI has made it very clear they're not going to the specifics of any of these cases. What they're going to be looking into is Article 1415 versus Article 26. They're focusing on that alone, and that is essentially of the right to practice one's religion versus the right to equality. Yes, it'll have an overbearing effect on a lot of other cases, and that is something that the Supreme Court has also acknowledged. Another interesting development that we're putting out on our screens, I'll bring Aishwarya in on this, Aishwarya, is that the Supreme Court has said two lawyers, Vaidyanathan as well as Rajiv Dhawan, who have filed an application in this matter, the CJI recognizing that they did a great job in the Ayodhya case, they've said that they too should be included in this particular matter.
Well, definitely, you know, this is what the Supreme Court is trying to do at the moment, streamline more things. And the Supreme Court, especially the CJI, knows that whatever decision they give, it will have a domino impact on other issues also. This is what the CJI has been telling, and this is what he's been saying. He's saying we are not going to decide on the specific facts of other cases. Now, there are cases with regards to Parsi women also. So definitely what the CJI is now trying to do is to make sure that all the councillors together sit together, and then they frame the questions and then come in front of the Supreme Court and the CJI, because the court at the moment is very clearly understanding that whatever decision comes, it will have ramifications on not just this one case, but on all the other cases which are attached to it.
So, you know, there's also a mention saying that petitions of polygamy, of nikah halala are also there. In fact, the SG has recognized what we've been discussing also, Gopi, that there are several cases which are touching this particular case, and the kind of overbearing impact that this ruling will have on several other cases, be it with regards to alleged discrimination against Muslim women, against Parsi women. There's a mention of polygamy, nikah halala and whatnot. But particularly with regards to the right to pray, the SG has said that when we sit together to frame the issues, it should not be about whether a specific case falls into which proposition. It will be very interesting to see, Gopi, exactly how the Supreme Court goes about this, because that perhaps is the biggest challenge, about how they will have to go into some specifics and at the same time ensure that it touches upon all cases.
Well, absolutely, because Kerala is keeping a very close eye on the developments from Supreme Court, basically for one matter. The September 28, 2018's judgment, which allowed women's entry in Sabrimala, has not been stayed yet, because there is no written order or a direction from the Supreme Court which states that that particular judgment by the then Chief Justice Deepak Misra has been stayed yet. So there is a sense of confusion, and that is one reason why we saw in the initial days of the Sabrimala festive season, women were trying to enter, women were stopped at the Pamba and Nilakal base camp, and they were asked to go back. Though there wasn't much of a commotion like we saw last year, there were some women who in fact approached the Supreme Court to get a clarity. But even then, they did not get a clear order. That is again something very, very significant, because there is still a provision for women to come to Sabrimala and try and enter, and then the police and the state government will be in a fix, and because they do not really know what to do about it. There is no written order which says that the particular judgment which allowed women into Sabrimala has been stayed. But moreover, last year in 2019 January, when the initial review petitions were filed, we remember that particular judgment clearly said that the 2018 September 28 verdict, which allowed women to enter Sabrimala, has not been stayed. So that is the final standing order that we have at the moment. So this actually makes a provision for women to come there and try and enter into the temple. And the state government, on the other hand, they are actually playing a very cautious approach because they do not want to create any commotion or any further issues in Sabrimala because they are approaching into an election year. Later this year, we have the local body elections, and immediately after that, by May, June 2021, we will have the state elections as well. So this actually is leaving all the parties or all the stakeholders in a fix and confusion because there is no final judgment or there is no final
But there's
word on
no
the status
question,
of
Gopi, that this particular decision that's taken by the Constitution Bench will have an overbearing effect on the politics in Kerala because it will essentially define what happens in the Sabrimala case as well as many, many other cases. We'll continue getting you all the latest updates of what really is happening in the Supreme Court. For the moment, Gopi and Aishwarya, thanks for joining us.